The creature from Jekyll Island. What do you know about the creature from Jekyll Island? If you've been involved in conspiracy culture, or what some people call alternative research, for any real amount of time, you've probably heard of the creature from Jekyll Island. And in this video, what I'm going to do is explain to you why the creature from Jekyll Island is in fact a hoax. However, there is a real creature from Jekyll Island taking place as we speak. We'll get to that in a moment. But before we do, it has been a few weeks since my appearance on the Higher Side Chats. And once again, can't thank Greg enough for the interview. He is the best in the business. He showed why that's the case. And if you haven't listened to that call, I recommend you do, especially the full-length call. If you haven't listened to it, check it out. It goes in places that even I didn't expect. And I couldn't help but notice that of the last 16 uploads, the last 16 interviews that Greg has done, my interview happens to be currently the most viewed. I could be wrong about that, but what do we got? 7,000, 10, 14, 8, 6, 10, 16, 6, 7, 4, 7, 5. So, looks like old John the Bon is at the top of the pops of the last 16 that have been uploaded. Now, who would have thought that? Who would have thought that a person who speaks about all of these hoaxes, somebody who comes along and says, oh, those stories that you believe about ancient history, well, I've been looking into those stories and it turns out that they're all completely make-believe. Oh, Nikola Tesla, you like Nikola Tesla, do you? Got some bad news. He is also, in fact, a hoax. Who would have thought? Of all people, it was me who came along and has gotten more views from an interview than anyone else from the past 16 weeks. Even I wouldn't have expected that, and I'll tell you why. Because I didn't think that people were ready to hear this kind of information, okay? In the so-called conspiracy world, there's lots of people, they love stories. They love stories, just like all humans, they love stories. They love stories about ancient Egypt, and they love stories about Nikola Tesla, and all these kinds of things. And I come along and I say, well, maybe those stories are real, but I've actually spent considerable time looking at the so-called evidence, reading the scientific papers, reading the history textbooks, trying to trace the primary sources. And you know what? God damn it, there is no primary sources for a lot of this stuff. It's make-believe. Well, I didn't think people would be ready for that. But it turns out they are. And the response from that appearance on THC has been truly phenomenal. And it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped yet. Still, I'm getting correspondence from people around the world saying that they liked what I had to say and they didn't realize other people had done this kind of work before. And a few people even said words to the effect of, I have done this myself, gone and looked for primary sources, couldn't find them, just thought it must just be me and kind of dismissed it. But hearing you, JLB, made me realize there's something to this. So yeah, the response has been absolutely terrific. And one of the questions I keep getting asked, and I meant to make this video a while ago, so I apologize for taking so long, but one of the questions I've been asked is, have you done interviews in the past? And the answer to that question is, yes, I have. Earlier this year, I was interviewed by a podcast called A Culture, a guy named Ryan, and when I was interviewed, he was still releasing all of his interviews for free. He's now gone to a similar model to THC, where he releases the first hour for free and then releases the second portion to his members, which I think is fair enough. That's not the model that I generally use, but I think it is a smart model and it seems to be effective, and I think it's fair as well. But the good news is that my interview with him is actually available, the entire interview, completely for free. And in it, we spoke about two main topics, one being Bitcoin, and the other one being what I call the creature from Jekyll Island Bitcoin version. So we weren't just talking about what Bitcoin is or what cryptocurrency is or maybe some of the occult elements of Bitcoin. I actually explained something that's happening every year that even Bitcoin people don't seem to know anything about. And it blows me away. I speak to people who have been in the Bitcoin game for years and I ask them about this and they've never heard of it. But in fact, there is a yearly get-together of all of the big names in cryptocurrency. It's invite only, and these guys get together, some of them who supposedly are promoting rival coins or rival platforms, but apparently when they get together once a year, they're all friends, and this is acknowledged if you know where to look, And yet many so-called cryptocurrency experts, I never hear them speak about this. So I spoke about that myself with Ryan of the Culture podcast, and you can listen to all of that completely for free. I'll put a link in the info box below. You might not be interested in Bitcoin. You might say, well, Bitcoin's not my thing. Here's what you have to understand. Cryptocurrency is not going away, okay? And I'm not here to say that you should invest in Bitcoin or otherwise. That's a different question. The question of cryptocurrency, what's its future? Well, cryptocurrency is the future, whether you like that or not. So to understand where it really comes from, who's really behind it, what they're up to, and some of the occult intertwinings in the cryptocurrency sphere, to understand that, I think should be useful to anybody who's interested in the future, cryptocurrency, or occult or esoteric studies. So again, I'll put the link to that in the info box below. And I've got to say, Ryan, he hasn't been doing the podcast for as long as Greg of the THC, but he's a very polished performer. And it won't be long before it's basically Greg versus Ryan for the most popular podcaster in this corner of the internet. Greg's still ahead by a fair way, and that's fair enough. He's been doing his work for a long time, but you listen to Ryan and you'll see that, well, there's two players in that game at the moment, and they're both very good at what they do. Now, final thing, if you happen to like some of what I've done on YouTube, and I've released more than 500 videos now, it's been quite a journey over the last few years, you might be thinking to yourself, well, these are the kinds of conversations that I want to hear more of. And at johnlebon.com, for the equivalent of $4 US per week, can you believe that? You'll get to hear 2 hours every week uploaded, another 2-hour conversation every week with members of the website, which you can even partake in, and you can bring the topics that you want to discuss. And basically my job is just to moderate the discussion, keep it flowing along nicely, and let real people talk about real things, such as the hoaxes, the entire hoax hierarchy. Talk about whatever you want. We'll talk about the hoaxes, occult studies, esoteric studies, health, alternative health, or what I would call real health, any of these kinds of things, all welcome on the John LeBon member calls, which you can partake in, like I said, for the equivalent of $4 US per week. An absolute bargain, if I do say so myself. And what are we going to be talking about this week? Well, here's how it all sort of fits in together. You see, this week we're talking about, among other things, the Illuminati card game, which most people in this scene know nothing about. Okay, they've heard of it. Sometimes they'll show you a card and say, look, this proves this or that. But nobody seems to know where these cards came from, except for yours truly. And I share that analysis with the members of johnlebon.com. And look at this, it is a 9-part series and counting, where I look at not just the cards themselves, but where the cards came from, what they were trying to accomplish with this card game. And you can access all of that right now on johnlebon.com. And as I said, that is one of the topics we'll be discussing on this weekend's call at johnlebon.com on the John LeBon Discord server, which you get access to when you sign up to johnlebon.com. So once again, just going through the key points there. If you haven't heard my interview on the Higher Side Chats, go and check it out. Link in the info box below. Same with my interview on a culture. The full call is available. I'll put a link to that in the info box below. And finally, if you haven't already done so, ask yourself why you're not going to join the other 70 and counting people who are now taking part in these kinds of conversations at johnlebon.com. Everybody's welcome, so long as you're polite and civil. There are no beliefs that you have to have or beliefs you can't have. So long as you're polite, civil, and like to have a good conversation, you are welcome at johnlebon.com. So that'll do it for today on the 5th of October 2018. Like I said, check the links in the info box below. And until next time, you guys take care of yourselves.